Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and I am here today to talk about my May reflection. So, some of the decks I've worked with, books I've read, and some of the great memories that I've had from May. So, to start off with, I want to say May was kind of an amazing month. The most exciting thing I think that happened was that Renee from Meadowlark Mystic, she moved to the area, and we discovered that we were actually pretty close. So we got together for coffee at the first part of May, and we got to meet in person, and that was just a really wonderful experience. It was so much fun to have somebody to chat with who shares my passion for tarot. And we had this great long chat over coffee, and then she was able to come over to my house and check out my collection. And here next week, I think, I am heading over to her place to check out her collection. So that has been really exciting. So, it's really cool to have somebody to hang out with who enjoys tarot as much as I do. My local friends, as much as I love them, really have no interest in tarot beyond me doing readings for them on occasion, which is totally fine. But it's been really great to have somebody local to hang out with and chat with, and to share all of those tarot related things, and to see all of the amazing things that Renee does, and to be able to share some of the stuff that I've been working on with her. That's been really fabulous. She did also bring me a little gift. So she brought me some fabulous crystals, which are just gorgeous. Here's one of them. Here's another one. You'll probably see these pop up in my videos from time to time, because I have been laying them on my reading space. This one's really beautiful too. So you'll probably see those here and there throughout my videos. So really, I think that was one of my most favorite memories for May, has been getting to meet with Renee. She is an amazing person, and I just really love her energy, and I love connecting with her, and I'm super excited about spending more time with her and getting to know her better. So also in May is my birthday, and usually it falls right around Mother's Day, which sometimes can be a blessing and sometimes can be a curse. This year it wasn't actually on Mother's Day, but it was really close, so we kind of celebrated all in one, which is totally fine. I did get an awesome birthday haul, which I did film just for fun, just taking a look at some of the decks that I got for my birthday. Some of them were gifts, and some of them were decks that I purchased with, gift cards and things of that nature. So that has been a lot of fun. I really have had a fantastic assortment of decks come into my collection recently. But that's been also kind of a challenge, because I have been trying to rotate my decks out seasonally. And to be perfectly honest with you, it seemed like a really great idea at the time, and I divided all of my decks into bins. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in my April video or not, because I think I actually did it in April. But I divided up all my decks, but according to the 4 seasons, just their energy and how they felt. And so I had pulled out all of my spring decks. So spring was going to be March, April, May, and those were the 3 months that I was going to use my spring decks. And then starting in June, I was going to move into my summer decks. And for the most part, that has worked really well, with the exception of I do feel a little bit stifled. I feel a little bit limited. So the idea behind it was, I have a lot of decks. I have over 100, not so many of some, but a lot more than others. And it sometimes gets a bit hard to rotate through them all, and to make sure that I am using them all, because I have a tendency to kind of just use what ends up on my table. And sometimes I kind of forget about some of the other decks that I have. So I've been doing things like trying to do tarot and oracle pairs for my daily draw, trying to swap out my decks weekly, and all of that is fabulous. And I am really enjoying the pairings, and I'm really enjoying the weekly swap out for just my daily draws. But what I am finding is that I'm feeling a little bit stifled by only having decks with a certain energy. So while I thought this was a great idea, because, springtime, we feel that spring energy, and then moving into summer, we'll feel that summer energy. What I'm finding is that I personally don't always feel like spring. Sometimes I feel like winter, and sometimes I feel like autumn. So for example, there was a reading that I did, And for whatever reason, I felt really called to use my Green Witch Tarot, which I really don't ever use. So the fact that I felt called to use it and I was looking for it probably meant something. And I was bad and I totally ignored it and said, nope, that is in, I think it's in my autumn decks. And so I was like, nope, I'm not going to use that one. And looking back, I wish I had just used the deck. I ended up using a different one and it was totally fine and the reading worked beautifully still. But I ignored that call from my inner self, that call from my inner spirit. And I totally ignored that because it didn't fit into my little box that I had created. And so I think that the categorizing my decks and swapping them out by season, I think really is great in theory, but it's not really working for me because I'm finding that there are days that I don't want my super light, flowery, I don't even know how to explain it, my spring decks. They all kind of have that really light, flowery kind of feel to them. And while they're beautiful and I love them, I don't always feel that way. And sometimes I want a darker deck, or sometimes I want something that's a lot heavier or a lot moodier. And so I'm finding that swapping them out and limiting my access to my collection is really not working well for me. I am trying to find ways that I can rotate my collection out more. Doing the weekly draws, I think is going to be probably the key to that, because that seems to be working really well for me. But I am in the process of kind of moving those decks back out and trying to get them reacclimated into my collection. I've been making new bags for some of my decks, which I'll show you here in a minute, so that I can store them more easily. I don't like to store my decks in boxes unless they come in basically deck-sized boxes. Unless it's a tuck box. I just don't like tuck boxes. Tuck boxes always get tossed. But anyway, putting them into a bag versus those big boxes that they sometimes come in works a lot better for me because I don't have a ton of storage space for my decks and I want to keep them readily available. So that's one of the things that I've been doing is moving those decks back out, because even though I kept saying, and I even said to Renee when she was here, I'm going to do it for a year. I'm just going to force myself to do it. And then I thought, why am I forcing myself to do it? Like, who cares? Nobody cares what decks I'm using. So I should just use whatever decks I feel called to use and not try to make my practice fit into a box. And that's a whole nother thing. So speaking of decks, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the decks that I have been working with this month. So before we dive into the decks that I worked with this month, I just want to real quick show you some of the bags I made, because I made a ton of bags over the weekend. So this was a bag that I made for the John Bower that I made, or that I modded. Love this deck now. Not that I didn't love it before, but I love it even more now. So this was the little bag that I made for the John Bower, and some of my bags are kind of wonky and weird, and that's okay with me because I don't always make them properly. Point in case, here is the bag for my Green Witch, and I totally sewed up the top and forgot to stitch the ribbon in to hold it down, so I had to go back and glue that on, and then I just threw a button on there to cover up the glue spot, and it's not even or anything, but you know what, that's okay. But I think it works beautifully for this deck. This deck has needed a bag for a really long time. I had it in one of those cheapy drawstring like velour bags, I think it was, that you buy on like Amazon for like $2 or $3, and it broke a long time ago, so I really needed to make a bag for this, so I went ahead and did it. It's got kind of a Christmassy feel, but I think it works really well. This is the new bag that I made for my trimmed Sacred Traveler, and it is really tight. I almost made it too small. Again, another deck that I absolutely love, that I squared, and I created this little bag for it, which the cards I kind of have to do. See, this is what I'm talking about. My bags are not perfect, but that's okay. They work for me. So I managed to get it in there. So that's just a cute little bag that I made for that one. And I love the bags because, for one, like I mentioned before, I think in my video on how I make my bags, all of the fabric is very mindfully chosen. So as soon as I pick up a bag, I know what's in it. This is my Goddess Oracle. I love this bag. This one I think came out one of the best, even though my ribbon's a little bit wonky, but the deck fits in there really well. And I think that the bag just, it looks beautiful. I like when my bag matches my cards. I'm just funny like that. But anyway, so that's the Goddess Oracle bag. And this is a bag, again, another one that I've needed to do for a really long time. This is for my Sacred Creators Oracle. Again, it's really tight fit for this one. I almost made the bag too small, but again, love it when my bags match my deck, so that's kind of what I tend to go for. These will loosen up a little bit, I think, but they're a little tight to start with. And I don't usually do white bags. Hopefully I won't get it like super dirty, but I think it works really well with that deck. Next I have, you'll see a sneak peek because this is coming up in one of my Mod With Me videos. But this is my Vintage Wisdom Oracle, which I'm actually not going to show you the deck because I don't want to ruin the sneak peek. But here's the bag that I created for it, and I will show you the inside. So again, another fabric that was, you know, very mindfully chosen. Sometimes it takes me months to find fabric for a deck. Point in case here, this is my very massive, and this bag is all kinds of wonky, but this is my Soul Cards 1 and 2 all mixed together. And it took me a really long time to find a fabric that I really liked that blended that blended the colors, I guess. I don't even know what I was looking for. I was just looking for fabric to jump out at me and say, you know, I'm for the soul cards. This is me. And this fabric finally did last week when I was at Joann's. So I went ahead and got it and finally made this massive bag for this bulky deck, which I do absolutely love because it's 2 decks in one. And my bag is totally wonky and not at all proportional and looks totally funny, but I'm okay with that because it works. And I spent a pretty good chunk of my time, pretty much all day on Sunday, making all these bags. So yeah, so I thought I'd just show you those real quick, just so you can see some of the stuff as I'm shaking the table, so you can see some of the stuff that I've been working on. So the first 2 decks I worked with for my daily draws this month were the Fairy Tale Tarot by Lisa Hunt, and this is the Spanish edition, which I've shown many times before on my channel. I do have the app on my phone so that I'm able to read the stories that go along with these cards, and that's been really helpful. I just think the artwork is absolutely beautiful, and I really do like this deck. And I paired that with the Winged Enchantment Oracle, and I still need to make a bag for this one because, again, tuck box, not a fan. But this is, again, a beautiful deck. It's another Lisa Hunt deck, so it did seem kind of natural to pair these 2 together. I do find that with this deck, I have to use the guidebook because I am not familiar enough with the energy of these birds to work without them. But you can see here that these cards just really look beautiful together. The pairings worked really well. The messages were really in sync. I just really enjoyed working with these 2. This is definitely a pairing that I think I will be doing again, because I think they just look beautiful together. The next 2 decks I used were my Moonchild Tarot and my Sacred Creators Oracle. These 2 decks pair together just beautifully. Like I said, it's like they are made for each other. The messages from the Sacred Creators, there is a lovely guidebook. I don't tend to use it. I usually just read what's on the card and then work more intuitively, kind of the same way that I work with the tarot, but it's just a beautiful pairing together, and the messages were really spot on. I really enjoyed working with the 2 of them together, and they just Like, they just work beautifully together. Like, what do you really want? Here's the Tower. It's gonna break away all the stuff you think you want and show you what you really want. Just beautiful. Creator Earth. Raw Intention for the Emperor. I mean, even just flipping through these decks, just like this, is just beautiful. The Magician. What does your soul say? How beautiful are these? So that was another pairing that I will definitely be using again, and I really enjoyed the way that these worked together. I did use them in some other readings as well as for my daily draws, and they just work beautifully together. I highly recommend them. So up next we have the beautiful Paulina Tarot, which is a deck that I absolutely love. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous deck. I am still thinking about trimming it. I know, I've said it like a million times. I might do it. I've seen it without the titles, and I really, really like it without the titles, but I just don't know if I would be able to really know what every card is, but I might try it. You never know. And then we have The Universe Has Your Back, which I have mixed feelings about this deck, to be perfectly honest with you. The cards are beautiful. The artwork is stunning. But sometimes the language on the cards is a little much for me. And there's a lot of, like, the word love. And I think some of the messages would be better served without adding the additional in love part. And I'll show you when one comes up. But these two decks really actually work really well together. The coloring, as you can see, aesthetically, it's very pleasing to work with together. Happiness is my birthright for the Two of Wands. I think that the messages are really beautiful together. And I love doing this and just flipping through these decks just as they are. You would think that I had paired them up to look this aesthetically beautiful together, but I really just flipping through them as I've pulled them out of their bags and boxes. And they work beautifully together. I was actually kind of surprised. The sort of more minimalistic look to The Universe Has Your Back cards pairs really nicely with the kind of busyness of the Paulina. And I think they're really beautiful together. And the messages really seem to be spot on and very in sync. See, Three of Cups. Energy flows where my intention goes. I mean, how beautiful is that? So it's just a gorgeous deck. And they just look stunning together. I swear I didn't, like, stack these up to work this well together. They just do. There's two of them. You know, my faith has the power to turn trauma into healing, conflict into growth, and fear into love. Okay, that one works all right, but here we have, when I'm in alignment with the love of the universe, peace cannot be disrupted. I think you can just say, when I'm in alignment with the universe, peace cannot be disruptive. Some of them are really... Here's another one. I let go of the shadow of the past by seeing someone for the first time. Perfect, stop there. But then it says, with the eyes of love. They're just too wordy on some of them. And some of them are really, really beautiful. And some of them are just a little too, you know, in love. And everybody's love. And we are all love. And it's just it's a little much for me. Some of these longer messages, I think, would be better served by taking out some of that extraneous text. See, here's another good one. I am a spirit having a human experience. Perfect. Stop there. But then it says, and I'm getting closer to love. And I'm here to get closer to love. Nope, this had been perfect if it had just stopped here. I'm a spirit having a human experience. That is a beautiful, powerful message. So anyway, two beautiful decks. Found that they just worked really, really well together. So my next pairing for my weekly draws was the Mesquite Tarot. And I do believe that this one is out of print now, so I apologize. I don't like to show out of print decks because it's, you know, if you fall in love with them, they're hard to get. But this was the decks that I worked with. And of course the Roots and Wings Oracle, which I did a walkthrough of on my channel. And I am still just as in love with this deck as I was then. I don't know why I flipped that around the wrong way. These two decks are really beautiful together. The cardstock is so vastly different on them. This has that rubbery cardstock that shuffles really beautiful, and this is really, it's got good cardstock, but it's super slick, and the cards tend to go flying away from me. Like, I don't know if I'm just a bad shuffler or what, but whenever I shuffle this, several cards, and I'm not talking just like one or two, I'm talking like 3/4 of the deck ends up in various, places on my table, on the floor and whatnot. So I get a bit frustrated with this deck. As much as I love it and as beautiful as it is, I do tend to get a bit frustrated with it because the cardstock is so slippery. And then you have this kind of, not really sticky, but really substantial rubbery cardstock. So tactile-wise, it was a really interesting experience working with these two decks together. Pairing them artistically and aesthetically speaking, they are beautiful together. And I really enjoyed pairing the tarot with the messages of this particular oracle. They just work really beautiful together. So just flip through some of the cards. I mean, so just so beautiful. Like, how beautiful are those two together? This Mesquite Tarot is not a deck that I use very often, but I do really love it. I mean, it's like, it ticks all of my boxes, but I think it's the cardstock that keeps me from using it, to be perfectly honest, because I absolutely love the imagery. I love the simplistic nature of it. I love the subtleness. It has a very subtle energy to it that I really appreciate. But when the cards go flying, whenever I shuffle them, I get frustrated. And poor little deck, I get frustrated with it. But anyway, the images look really, really beautiful together. And I did really enjoy working with these two decks together. So I've left the roots and wings out because I used it again in another week. But I'm going to flip through half the deck here just so that you get a chance to see some of the other cards. I worked with this deck alongside my Dreaming Way. Again, another one of my absolute favorite decks. And these two decks looked really beautiful together, and the messages were really in sync, and I really enjoyed that about this combination. May was a really good month for my my pairings. I did a good job in picking decks that paired really well together. Again, tactilely, it's a really interesting tactile experience to work with this deck, which is so bendy and rubbery. And then you get a deck that's, like the Dreaming Way, which does not have, I don't like the cardstock on this deck. It's really thick. It's really hard for me to shuffle. But, I mean, look how beautiful these are. Bound and Death. Gorgeous pairings. Kindreds and the Hierophant. Just stunning. The pairings with these two in particular, I did enjoy working with the Mesquite Tarot. But these two decks in particular speak really well to each other. And you can even read them of, the Divine in the Six of Pentacles. Drifting from the Seven of Swords. It's just so beautiful. Love both of these decks. Here we have Mystery and the Two of Swords. I mean, how gorgeous are those together? So yeah, I could go on and on about these two. I will definitely be using these two decks together again. This one has become my new favorite oracle. The Dreaming Way is one of my, top decks. It's one of my favorites and has been for quite some time. And these two just speak really well together. Sometimes tarot and oracle decks, they seem to have a conversation. And these two decks definitely converse. And it was really a lot of fun to work with them in my daily readings. I do intend to do some bigger readings using these two decks because they just work so well together. So the big things that I have coming up in June is I do have a video on how I journal. So a lot of people have asked me to kind of describe my process and to show how I go about that. So I've tried to do that in the best way that I can. It's kind of an organic process, so it's hard to put into words, outside of I was able to tell you, this is what I do at the beginning of the month, this is what I do every week. Outside of that, it's like whatever floats my boat in the moment. I know I got so many great responses on the John Bower, and a lot of people had messaged me and emailed me and asked me for more information about rebacking. So I put together a tutorial where I show you how I go about rebacking a deck, and then I also show you some of the mistakes that I have made in rebacking decks, and so hopefully that you won't make those same mistakes that I did. The other big thing that I have in June is I have finally, it's been months, I know, but I have finally got together my deck diver, how I deeply study a tarot deck. I've got a video of that process, and I also have a guide that I put together called Tarot Bound, and it is my entire process from beginning to end, and will be available for you to purchase so that you can follow that process as well. But I will also have the video to kind of explain how I go about it, and if you just want to check out the video, and that's great too. But I have had a lot of people ask how I go about the process, and it is actually quite lengthy because I do a pretty deep dive into my decks. So I have done a whole separate video on that. Also this month, I have a couple of walkthroughs that I have done. I've kind of changed up my structure a little bit for my walkthroughs. I hope that you really enjoy them. I tried to get a lot closer in on the cards, and I tried to include my own thoughts and reflections on the cards themselves, because I know that when I go to look for walkthroughs, those are the two things that I'm looking for. I want to be able to see the cards really well, and I want to hear what you think about the cards. Even though I'm not an expert by any means, I have included, for the most part, my reflections on the cards, my thoughts on the deck, and that kind of thing. It's not quite a review because it's not really very formal. It's more of just, I call it a walk through the cards, because we're just wandering through the deck together and taking a look at the cards, and then I share my thoughts with you on them. So let me know if that's something that you enjoy and want to see more of. I also have some more Mod With Me videos where I've done some deck modifications. Those are just my shorter ones for the most part. There might be one or two fairly long ones in there, but just where we sit together and we modify one of my decks. So those are videos that I really enjoy making as well, because I like sharing that process with you. Anyway, so that's it for me for today, and all of the wonderful things that I had to share with you about May. I hope that you had a wonderful May, and I wish you many blessings going into June. And again, if you have any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I do try to check them quite frequently. You can also connect with me on Facebook, through Instagram, and of course email, and all of those links are in the description box below. So thank you for joining me for this reflection video, and I hope you will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.